I have the honor of interviewing LibertyCon's artist guest of honor, Tiffany Toland-Scott. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for doing this.
Okay. Let me start by reading a brief bio you posted on LinkedIn. I am an artist and the owner of my own company. My art can be viewed at spellboundbrush.com. I have been making digital art for nearly a decade now and have been licensing my art since 2005. Over the years, I've worked with a number of companies, but after taking a hiatus in 2010 to start a family, I am back to painting Gothic and fantasy imagery. I'm going to ask about a number of those things, but I want to start with, you have a nickname, Tito. How did you get it?
So most of the time when you go to a science fiction convention art show, they will give your piece a number, and it starts with some combination of your initials. And a lot of the time it's the first two letters of your first name and the first two letters of your last name. So I show up on paperwork as Tito.
Ah, okay, yeah. Okay. Your artistic career started in childhood when you created a weekly comic strip, which you Xeroxed and distributed on your bicycle to your neighbors. Some of those neighbors still have them. What did your friends, family, and neighbors think of your efforts?
They probably thought it was kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. How old were you at the time?
I think I was like 4 or 5.
Oh, okay. So they probably thought it was adorable then.
My neighbors thought it was really cute. I think my grandmother was tired of me using all the copier paper all the time. But
okay. Do you remember some of the storylines you used in the?
Not really. I remember one about like a Mr. and Mrs. Potato, but that's it.
Oh, okay. The obvious question for an artist is, what medium did you use for the comic?
I used to always use stuff that I found in my grandma's desk. So it was usually ballpoint pens and highlighters.
Ah, okay, okay. One of the lines in your bio from your webpage says, when not riding horses or dancing, I spent my free time painting along with Bob Ross and my grandmother. If you would, tell us about your grandmother.
My grandmother, she's still alive, but she doesn't paint anymore. But she was a folk artist for a long time. She painted like saw blades and random pieces of like metal stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm. The kind of stuff you'd see in a craft fair.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Like a lot of Bob Ross kind of like landscapes and things like that.
Mm-hmm. How young were you when you painted with your grandmother and Bob Ross?
Probably like 3 or 4.
Wow. Oh, okay. I was thinking much older than that, like 7 or 8 or something.
No.
Were you a prodigy?
I don't think so. I don't think it was very good.
Oh, okay. Okay. Tell me about Bob Ross. I've heard of him, like, I don't know, all my life, it feels like, but I've never actually sat down and watched his show. Did you learn stuff from it?
Yeah, actually, he's probably one of the better art educators. He teaches very realistic ways to use art materials instead of like the proper way to use things. He was very creative about how he would use tools.
Okay, okay. Many artists these days do their work entirely in digital format, perhaps for speed, convenience, the ability to edit the work on the fly, and because their clients want the resulting work as a digital file. But you prefer more of a hybrid approach. Why is that?
I just don't really like working on the computer. It feels really disconnected because you can't really ever interact with it. And probably because I started out painting traditionally when I was a kid, it seems more intuitive to me, like to be able to like add water or like blend something with your finger, and you can't do any of that on the computer. So it just feels strange.
Yeah, my take is that digital art, it's imitative of physical art, of physically created art. I was talking to one guy, an artist a few years ago, and he said his biggest downside to digital art was that there is no original art that you can then sell as the original. And he felt that was a big downside for it. I mean, you can crank out copies over and over, but none of them are the original.
Yeah.
Nature features heavily in your work, perhaps because of where you grew up. Describe the place you grew up, if you would.
Well, it looks like a Bob Ross painting. There's a mountain and a lake and lots of pine trees and wildflowers all around the lake. And that was like the view from our kitchen window. And then all around my house were more mountains. And I grew up in a place called the Wenatchee National Forest. And it's just a huge ancient pine and evergreen forest. And it's, I don't know, it's enormous. It's full of waterfalls and lots of like rivers, and there's like a huge lake system that goes through it. So the lake that I grew up is just part of a huge, it's actually like all diverted off of the Yakima River. Yeah.
It sounds idyllic. And I'm guessing that your family and neighbors and relatives and stuff were also kind of idyllic. I mean, the American dream.
I don't know. A lot of people out there were kind of strange because it was really rural and isolated.
What state is it?
Washington.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're known for the little of that.
Yeah, they're pretty strange Pacific Northwestern kind of people. Yeah.
I think a lot of people have seen what was it, Twin Pines or Twin Peaks? Excuse me.
Twin Peaks. Yeah, I actually haven't seen that, but
I haven't seen it either.
They filmed Northern Exposure where I grew up, and it was supposed to be Sicily, Alaska for the TV show. So there's still stuff in the town that's painted and says Sicily, Alaska, but you're not anywhere near Alaska. So,
Okay. In the early 2000s, you worked as a remote web developer. How did you get into that?
Well, I ended up having back surgery when I was pretty young, and I couldn't do a lot of the things that I had done before, like riding horses and gymnastics and stuff like that. And after you have a really major back surgery, you basically can't do anything for like a year. So I had a year to just learn something different that I didn't have to, be physically at risk to do it. So I started picking up computer programming and web developing, and then that got me into wanting to be able to make my own graphics and animations and things like that. And yeah, it just kept going from there.
Okay. Digital art proved to be a way to improve your web designs, airbrushing, photo retouching, animation, and a variety of other digital mediums. Your move into creating art for your web designs, was it gradual? Did it sneak up on you? And how long did it take to realize that you liked creating art more than designing websites?
It was pretty immediate that I realized I was going to have to come up with my own graphics, because you can't really just take other people's graphics because, it's copyright protected. So you get in trouble for doing that. So pretty much right away, I realized I was going to have to figure out how to make graphics on the computer. And that got increasingly more challenging as I wanted to create more and more ambitious designs. And eventually I moved from just editing photographs and trying to turn them into graphics to actually just drawing things, because I couldn't find photographs to use that I could edit for that.
Okay. What are some of the media that you've experimented over your career? Different types of media.
Well, I started out using acrylic paint because that's what my grandmother was using as a folk artist. And then, of course, I wanted to draw things at school. So pencils became, kind of the tool of the moment, because it was the only thing available at school. And then I got interested in watercolors because I really did not like the acrylic paint that we were using. And then I started trying to figure out how to combine digital and the watercolors together to make the watercolors look more sleek. Like a lot of the graphic design in the early 2000s was really shiny and metallic looking. And then I got really into digital art for a while. And then after that, I started to experiment more with like egg tempera and oil painting. And I got way more into graphite and all kinds of different types of pencils. And then finally, I just kind of settled on oil painting and have basically stuck with that for the last like 7 years.
I was surprised to learn a few years ago that The Last Supper, Leonardo da Vinci's, it was done with egg tempera.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big painting and it's famous and it's really, really old. Apparently this stuff holds up pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's very, very simple paint, and there's really not a lot of ingredients in it. So it ages pretty well, but it's very difficult to work with.
You mentioned graphite. Are you talking pencils or like powder or something like that?
Wood pencils, mechanical pencils, powder, water soluble graphite, all kinds of different.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'd never heard of water soluble graphite. Let's see. According to your bio on your website, in 2005, you began selling your digital art, and yet you felt unfulfilled by digital art. You covered this a little bit. Why was it unfulfilling?
I just felt really disconnected from it, and the process of printing digital art can be printing any art can be really disappointing sometimes.
At one point, you auctioned your watercolor paintings on eBay to support yourself while taking courses in game animation and fine art painting. Selling paintings on eBay sounds like a rough way to make a living. Is that true?
It can be. There was a period of time where artwork sold on eBay you wouldn't believe how fast you would put things up and they would just instantly be sold. And a lot of my collectors that I still have actually came from when I used to sell on eBay. But over the years, I think maybe the audience that eBay has attracted is not as interested in art buying, or I'm not really sure. It's kind of petered out quite a bit though over the last, I don't know, probably the last 10 years.
Okay. What did you learn from the courses in game animation during that time?
Not
anything useful?
No.
Okay.
I went to a for-profit art school, and they ended up getting busted by the government, actually.
Really?
Because they were like engaging in like predatory lending practices and trying to get parents to take loans out and get kids to take loans out, and then they would max out like your federal loans and then tell you to take out private loans, and they would help you apply for these like massive private loans, and then they would take like they were supposed to give you money to live on every month, and they would take that money and never give it to you. And yeah, they got busted, and they have to pay back everyone that still owes money on their student loans. So
wow. Okay. Well, I will not ask their name then.
They don't exist anymore. So
okay. Yeah. Well, was it the same company? What I was going to ask, what did you learn from the courses in fine art painting? Was that the same company?
No, it was actually I realized that the art school that I was going to was a scam, and both of my teachers were awesome teachers, but the school was not equipped to teach the program that we were supposed to be learning. Like we were supposed to be learning computer animation, and this was in like 2007, 2008, and we still had the old colored iMacs that were like squares. And I was like, how are we gonna learn to animate on these things that are like 10 years old already, you know? But the teachers were both awesome, and one of them taught at a community college that was nearby. So I ended up switching and going to that community college to take more painting classes from him.
Okay. In the spring of 2009, you met your husband, Luke, at a sci-fi convention. Was, quote, and it was love at first sight, unquote. If you would, talk about how you met.
He came to a panel, and I think the panel was either about fairies or it was about the absinthe fairy specifically. I'm not really sure. But I had done a painting of the absinthe fairy or the green fairy, and it had been used in a documentary in Finland about absinthe and the mythology and all of the different poems and paintings and even songs and stuff that have come out of people supposedly seeing the green fairy. And he came to that panel and he was really interested in the particular painting that it was about. And he followed me after the panel and he was asking to talk to me. And I was in the middle of something. So I was like, can you wait a minute? And he was like, yeah, sure. And I totally expected that he would not be there when I got done with what I was doing. But I turned around and he was just sitting on a bench patiently waiting. And I was like, wow, he's really, really polite. And that's weird that he actually waited. And I started talking to him and he was super nice. And I found out he was from Georgia and I was like, oh, that's why you have manners, because you're like a Georgia peach. I get it now.
Okay. Yeah. So how did it develop? Did it continue at that con or did it go beyond? I mean, it must have gone beyond the con.
Yeah, we pretty much stayed together the entire convention. And I think we met on like Friday. So it was like a 4-day convention. So we pretty much just stayed together the entire weekend. And then we went our separate ways because he was living in Montana at the time and I was living in Washington and the convention was in Montana. And so I went home and we were talking on the phone and talking on the computer. And a couple of days later, I was like, this is never going to like turn into something if I'm here and he's there. So I was like, can I come like visit you for a while? And he was like, sure. So I just threw a couple bags in my car and I went back to Montana and then I never left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For those of the people that are not living up in the Northwest, Montana and Washington State sound like they're really close together, but they're not. You can be 500 miles apart up there.
Yeah, it was an 8.5-hour drive from my house to his house.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. On Amazon, you have many books. Most are journals. That is to say, they don't have any content in them. They're just, right. You've painted the covers. But at least 2 are full of your artistic creations. Talk about those if you would.
They're just, well, a lot of people prefer to have books instead of prints because, you run out of wall space, but you almost always have somewhere that you can keep a book. So there was a lot of demand for a book and I tried to get them published the traditional route, but it's really difficult to find a publisher that will just publish an art book with no like franchise behind it, or like I'm thinking of like Louis Royo, how a lot of his work is very thematic and each book has a theme to it and then it all gets licensed for products. It's really hard to find someone to publish an art book without that sort of like potential behind it for merchandise.
Yeah. Plus, I would think they would only pay attention to somebody if they were an actual legend already. I mean,
books are so expensive that they don't want to take a gamble on printing them and then not having them sell.
Bob Ross could come out with a book, but he's passed away, of course. But still, he's famous enough. Or what is it, Frank Frazetta? Somebody like that. Yeah. But unless you're a legend, I don't think because printing a book to begin with is expensive, but printing an art book, those are color pages.
Yeah.
That's super expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up just publishing them myself, and I kind of tried to make them, like one is a fairy book and one is more of the Gothic imagery, because a lot of people that like fairies don't like the Gothic stuff, or the people that like the Gothic stuff don't like the cuter fairy things. So I made them kind of split into little themes, I guess, so that people could get what they wanted.
Okay. Card.com offers charge cards from Visa featuring your artwork. How did you get that gig?
I actually have a licensing agent now. So he goes to companies and he goes to shows and he talks to people and shows them my art. And if they think it will work for their product, then we get a contract. And he does everything. And I just have to send new artwork and say yes or no. And then he gets all the money and he collects his part and he sends me my part. And I don't have to do, I used to do all that stuff myself. And it's like a whole other full-time job. And
sounds very clean.
I'd rather have someone who's like that is actually their job to do that, because it's a lot of traveling and going places to talk to people in like very serious business environments and stuff like that. And I'm not, I don't know anything about any of that stuff. So
Okay. You created an Oracle deck, which is available from thegamecrafter.com. While I know what an Oracle deck is, for those unfamiliar, what is an Oracle deck?
So it's kind of like a tarot deck, except instead of having the minor cards like the cups and swords and so on, it's almost like the whole thing is just the major cards. And then for mine, it is kind of based on the tarot. Some of them are completely different though. So mine have like the star and the moon and stuff like that. But some decks don't have any of the cards from the major arcana.
Yours are of a theme, of a set type of theme?
It's kind of, I guess, all goddess imagery or more like fantasy women, but I don't know. I don't like to say fantasy women because then I think sometimes people think I mean like male gaze kind of stuff. But it's more like goddess imagery.
Okay. A number of your artworks are available from posterlounge.com. Mermaids, angels, fairies, etc. Describe those if you would.
I don't know.
Okay. You may, because you have somebody that's selling or licensing your artwork, you may not be aware of all the places your artwork is available.
No. I do work with Poster Lounge, but they do their own, like I'll send them stuff and then they'll make the decisions about what they keep and what they don't. And since it's actually mostly in German, I'm not entirely, like I speak a little bit, but not very much. So I'm not entirely sure when they say, like they'll send me an email and say, we took down this one or we put this one up instead or whatever. But the titles and stuff are a lot of the time in German. When it comes through the email side, I don't even know what they're talking about.
Okay. I must have stumbled off on their English page, although all the prices were in euros.
Yeah.
Oh, my word. Tate Licensing features many of your artworks on their site, which is located at tatelicensing.com. If someone is looking to license one of your paintings or hire you to create a custom work, say for their book cover, is that who they would contact? Tate Licensing?
So Tate does my all the licensing for merchandise of existing images. And then I handle, if somebody wants something made for them, that is just through me. He does, he's the one that goes to the shows and talks to all the companies about what kind of merchandise my art would work on for them, or if we want to make like a new product line or something like that.
Speaking of which, do you do book covers? Have you done them in the past?
I've done them in the past. It's been a long time since I've done a book cover. And then for the next 2 years, I'm working on a tarot deck for Llewellyn Worldwide. So I don't have any time to take on any other jobs because I have to make 78 paintings in 2 years. So
wow,
yeah.
that sounds like a big project.
It's huge.
Okay. Let's see. Artwanted.com also features your work. How would you describe Art Wanted? Is it an artist community or a place to sell artwork, or both?
I think it's both. I started posting my artwork on there a really long time ago. And it was kind of just a community back then that had like contests sometimes. And then they had like one of those like tear off everyday calendars that they would make. So it would be like a different picture every day, and you'd get a new piece of art every time you tore off a page of the calendar. And so my art was in some of those. But I don't really participate in many of those like art communities anymore. I just don't really have the time to do all the contests and leave comments and things like that anymore.
I imagine contests are probably kind of rough because the outcome is uncertain, and so you don't know if you're wasting your time really or not.
It can be, a lot of the time it's like a popular vote thing. So the person who wins it is probably going to be the person who was already the most popular anyway. So
not necessarily the best artist.
Yeah, not necessarily even a fair contest, really. So
Okay. We covered this a little bit earlier, but I want to dig, if we can, if there's anything else to find in it. What is gained by doing art digitally, and what is lost? What is gained? Is anything gained?
I mean, it's a great tool to have, and I think that no matter how you produce your art, you should be able to edit it digitally, to deliver it digitally, because if you can't deliver it digitally, then you can't work anymore. Like, publishers don't want to wait for you to have like someone else digitize your work and then send it to them like through the mail or something. You know, they want you to be able to digitize it immediately and send it directly to them. And it also is really a huge financial investment, really, to have your work digitized by someone else, because you may have to pay a photographer to take pictures, and it's not the easiest thing to photograph artwork because it has to be perfectly flat and perfectly on center. And if you have even like one corner of the board tilted a little bit, it will make the entire perspective of the actual digitized piece look weird when you're looking at it on the computer. So it takes a lot of skill and a lot of time to photograph paintings. And so it's really expensive to have someone else do that work for you. If you can do it yourself, you know, you buy a camera and like Photoshop or some kind of photo editing software, and you've probably saved thousands and thousands of dollars.
Okay. Nowadays, a lot of artwork is, say, for example, if someone is self-published, then they're going to want a book cover. And so they'll hire an artist to produce their book cover for them, which, if it's produced digitally, it will never exist as a physical object. It'll be created digitally, put up on Amazon digitally, and enjoyed by the readers digitally. Nobody ever prints it out, really. So it has its own life because now there's a full ecosystem for it to exist in. We mentioned one thing that was lost by doing art digitally, though. That is having no original that you could then sell as an original. Is anything else lost? I mean, there's the visceral quality. You lose out on the experience of creating the piece of art. Is there anything else that would be lost? I
think when you're making something digitally, there's a lot of opportunities and options that you don't have. You know, as a traditional painter, I can make my own paint, and I can go outside and I can find things that I can make into paint, and I can like include my environment into my paintings. As a digital artist, that's completely off limits, because you can't, you know, like, what are you going to do? Like, rub it into the computer screen? You can't do anything with it. So I think it gives you more opportunities to explore your environment in the world, and what makes the material really that you make your artwork or art with, rather than being really just, I mean, digital painting is cool. It's just another medium, you know. It's I've heard somebody call it painting with light before, which I think is a really interesting way to look at it, because it is really just painting with light. But you are always separated from your work, and you can't ever really interact with it in a intuitive way, the way that you can when you're painting with traditional media.
Okay. In digital art, using layers is a powerful tool. If you would describe layers for those unfamiliar, and also how many layers might you use in a single work of art?
So, it's almost like if you got to add another clear canvas on top of your canvas, that's kind of what a layer is. Or if you put like a transparency over something and then drew on the transparency. It really depends on how, how you want to work. Like I know people that they put every little thing in a digital painting on a new layer, like they'll draw the eyebrow on one and the eye on another and the eyelashes on another. But for me, because I started out traditionally, I tend to draw everything on one layer. And then if I make a mistake, I just paint over it, because that's faster to me than to erase it and put on a new layer or whatever. So I think it just depends on who you ask, how many they would use.
Okay. It's apparently been a while since you've worked in digital art. What software did you use for digital art?
I always use Photoshop. It's what I learned how to use, and I've tried other things. Like I tried Corel Painter because it was supposed to have more of a traditional look to it when it was actually done, but I actually thought it was harder to use than Photoshop, which I don't know, most people tell me it's the other way around, but to me Photoshop makes sense and Corel Painter doesn't. It doesn't logically make any kind of sense to me. So I don't know. I pretty much just stuck with Photoshop, and I have a tablet that you can draw on. So
I was about to ask about equipment. What kind of equipment do you use?
Like I have a tablet that it has a pen and it goes right into the computer. So
is it a USB plug?
It's actually pretty complicated now. It's got like a USB and HDMI and like a monitor adapter on it too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sounds really advanced.
Yeah, they used to just plug in, and then it was like a little piece of plastic that you would just draw on, and then it would appear on the screen. And now they have a screen in them, so you draw right on the screen.
So you can see what you're drawing as you draw it on the screen you're drawing on.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
My knowledge is out of date on that. Okay. Let's see. No matter what for your profession, being findable online is an important aspect of marketing your work. What steps have you taken to make your work more findable?
Well, I've always had my own website, and I think that's important for anybody to do, whether they're selling their work professionally or just semi-professionally, or if they just want to someday. Having your own website means that you have control over at least some way that your work is presented online. You know, when you put it on like Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they can always censor you or take it down or whatever. So, and you want to be able to direct people to something that you have control over. So having your own website is probably the best way to be findable online as an artist.
Okay. Do some clients have trouble describing what they actually want? And if so, how do you help them express their vision?
Most people do. Most people are not visual thinkers, I think. So they often think that they want something, but then when you actually draw it for them, they're like, actually, I don't really like that.
Okay.
And so I kind of, I'll take like keywords of what they described and then I'll draw my own thing with it. And most of the time they like what I did with it and they're like, yeah, that's exactly it, even if it's not at all what they were describing. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. You have both self-published your artworks, that is, made them available for direct purchase by the general public, and sold them freelance, say as a book cover for an indie author. How do those approaches differ, and which creates more work for you?
Doing work where I have to work for other people, so like making work
like the tarot cards you're wearing on the deck you're going to be painting.
That's a pretty big job because I didn't create the deck, it's someone else's creation, and so I'm having to go by what they're describing and then kind of negotiate with them and like, you know, these are the limitations of what I'm working with or the amount of time we have, so like this is not this isn't going to be possible at the size that we're making these, or sorry, sometimes I get bees in here.
You look like a gnat.
I'm not really sure what
speaking of size, the cards are small, but you don't paint them that small. You paint them, how big do you paint them?
Usually I'm working on 12 by 16 canvases.
Okay. That seems more reasonable.
Yeah, I'll make them like 12 by 16 because I can sell the painting at that size and they're easy to find frames for. But I try to put because the tarot cards are like narrow, I put all the detail like in the center of the painting, and then I just finish out the sides, and all that will get cut off when they actually print the tarot cards.
Yeah, what they call bleed, at least in book publishing. Yeah, okay, okay. Let's see. What is it that outsiders don't understand about the world of art?
There's a lot of things.
I imagine, but you know, pick maybe a couple.
Well, it is actually work. It is actually a pretty difficult job sometimes. It can be very, very physically demanding. It's really difficult to sit for several hours and hold a brush and make a lot of like really small, precise movements with it. It's pretty easy to hurt yourself, actually. It can be a very dangerous job. A lot of, especially as an oil painter, a lot of the stuff that we work with is volatile or toxic. It's not always fun. It's a lot of the time it's not fun. If you're actually doing it for money, you often don't get to paint what you want to paint. You're usually painting, you know, whatever you got hired to paint. So there's kind of an idea that people have that art should be free or should be really cheap because you're having fun and you're getting to do something you love. And it's like, I actually don't love painting like shoe advertisements, you know? So yeah, those are a few things.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What is it that people don't understand about what you do as an artist yourself, either on a day-to-day basis or in planning out and building your career? You've already covered sort of the day-to-day basis. What about the building your career part of that question?
It's a very long, it's a long game. Like, you're not going to quit your job and then become an artist within a year. That's almost unheard of. There are a couple people who have done it, but they had like they went viral or something like that. You know, that doesn't happen very often. So it's kind of more like becoming like a medical doctor. Like you have to practice for a really long time and go to school for a really long time. And if you don't go to school, you have to take classes from somebody or read a lot of books for a really long time. And then you get a lot of practice and you start to get a reputation. And then finally you can actually say like, I make a living doing this thing. But it takes a long time to actually get there.
Mm-hmm. I interviewed a guy, I forget his name right now, and I'm kind of ashamed of that, but he was a guest of honor, artist guest of honor at LibertyCon like 5 or 6 years ago. And he said that he had just a few years earlier, and he's an older guy, you know, he had read a book and it changed how he painted. So apparently, even after your established career, he'd done 200 or more book covers, and you can apparently continue to learn all through life and really have your artwork shaken up, even, you know, as I say, later in your life, which sounds unlike a medical doctor, I think.
Well, I think they still go like to continuing education, and
yeah,
if they're good, right, they keep on top of it. But yeah, there was this book by James Gurney. I think it's called Color and Light.
I think that's the book he mentioned.
Yeah, that book is like, you can paint every day for like 20 years, and then you read like one page of that book and you're just like, I have been thinking about this totally the wrong way for so long.
He mentioned that from that book, he learned that by covering the painting he'd already created with a wash, a thin tint, yellow or blue or whatever, it unified all the elements in the painting and made the whole thing into clearly a unit. It was a book cover, and it was a big improvement to the painting.
Yeah.
Let's see. What's different in the field of art now compared to 10 years ago or more?
A lot more of it is digital. It used to be, if you didn't know how to, I mean, most people didn't know how to digitize anything. So if you didn't know how to deliver your work digitally, they were like, that's fine. You can send me a disc or something like that, you know? But now it's like, it's expected that you will email your pictures, and that you will do it quickly, you know, like I didn't work for a while because I was raising a family, and then I came back and it was like everyone knew how to do all the stuff that before I felt like I had kind of an edge over other people because I could deliver things faster. And it was like, everyone does that now. That's nothing special. So it was kind of shocking.
Yeah. I write magazine articles, and every editor on earth expects them to be sent as an attachment to email. Yeah. I wrote an article for the Times of India. It was like, send it by email. You know, there's no barriers to distance anymore. They all want it as an attachment.
Yeah, I did FTP for a long time, or send a disc or a thumb drive in the mail. There were a few places that would still accept slides when I started out. And now if you go somewhere and you're like, I need slides, you want what? We can put it on a disc for you.
Oh, by the way, I made a mistake. I did not write for the Times of India. It was Digit. It was the largest technical magazine in India.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. Let's see. How does the use of digital tools affect the speed at which projects are done? You've actually already covered that a bit. And also deadlines, also covered that. What advice would you give to a young artist just starting out, entering their studies or in their professional career? Any advice about how to promote their artwork and build a business around their art?
I think actually going places and meeting people is a lot more valuable than social media. A lot
like
of people,
networking in person, like conventions?
Yeah. Conventions, or taking workshops, classes, even taking classes online and having classmates. You can help each other out a lot as you go forward in your careers, because they'll know people. And you know, I have a lot of friends, pretty much all of my friends are also artists or illustrators, so we'll get emails about jobs and be like, hey, I don't have time for this, or this isn't really my thing here, you know, and you'll give it to someone else. There's a lot of emphasis on social media these days, and being like Instagram famous or something like that. But it's very, very difficult to actually turn any Instagram follower into a customer. And it's a lot easier to get jobs from actually knowing people and having them be familiar with your work, and being involved in projects. You know, a lot of people spend a lot of time pursuing online fame or internet fame, whatever, and they don't spend very much time making things. Most of my my success in recent years has come from that Oracle deck that I self-published. It's been something that not only do I have something to sell to people, but I also have something where I can go to, like, meet an editor and just give them a copy and be like, this is the kind of work that I can do. And that's, I think, actually how I got this job with Llewellyn Worldwide. Was I went and I met their editor in person at a convention, and I gave her a copy of my Oracle deck, and I was like, you know, I would like to work with you. And she was like, can I take this back? This is beautiful. And I was like, yeah, you can keep that. And I think they did keep it. Because then out of the blue one day, they were like, hey, can you do this project? And I was like, oh, I never thought I would hear from you. But, you know, giving somebody something like that they'll keep, you know, people get business cards, they throw that kind of stuff away all the time. But if they get something like a book or an Oracle deck, they're going to keep that, and they're going to keep looking at it. Mm-hmm. So do something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a writer, not an artist. And both writers and artists, it's basically kind of put up or shut up. Either you can do the job or you can't. But at least art, you can show someone in like 1 second a piece of art.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to read a story or a short story or whatever. So writers are at a bit of a disadvantage as far as that goes. But yeah, so let me finish with, if someone wants to learn more about you and your art, where online would they go?
My website is probably the best place, spellboundbrush.com. And if you just want to see my artwork, you can also go to my portfolio at spellboundvisions.com. Okay. Well, I thank you for taking the time for the interview. It's great stuff. Yeah, thank you for interviewing me.